Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Gachathaini Wash Processed Kenya from Duck Rabbit Coffee. And there's the bag right there. And Duck Rabbit, based out of Cleveland, Ohio. And they're a suggestion to us by our friend Greg. So shout out to and thank you to Greg for the suggestion. Now, first things first, I know that this setup looks a little different, and that's because we did move into a new shooting location and have a new lighting system. So I'm hoping it might correct some of the lighting issues that we have had in the past, and potentially maybe some of the audio issues. So let me know what you guys think. Maybe a little lighter, maybe a little darker. But let's discuss this coffee right here, which is Duck Rabbit, a coffee roaster I had zero familiarity with going into this review. And there's a fun little backstory behind this coffee, as Greg is a Cleveland Guardians fan and I am a Seattle Mariners fan. And they played a series recently in which we had a small wager, and the loser had to send the other one a bag of coffee from the location of their sports team. So he sent me this coffee from Cleveland, and I am looking forward to discussing it, as well as the Mariners and the Guardians both being in the playoffs. This right here is day 32. And recipe we went with for this coffee was our standard recipe, a 16:1 water to coffee ratio, brewed at 205 degrees Fahrenheit, and I like this one best through the V60, which indicates a more medium fine grind. Roast profile for this coffee, it's very much in line with what you would expect a standard light medium American. So that's to say that it's a little less developed than the way that Onyx has gone recently, but slightly more developed than something on the slightly lighter side of American coffee roasters like Hart. So with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. Day 10, first impression, and there was definitely a fair bit of bright and savory aspects, very reminiscent of what you might expect from a Kenyan coffee. But it is balanced out well with a variety of fruit components, including a bitter and somewhat sweeter citric aspect to it. Slightly sugary as well as somewhat punchy, and as a result, it left a pretty positive first impression. Day 12, ran it through the V60, and it was a little bit more savory on this day through this brew method, as there were plenty of the Kenyan-like aspects, including a slight tart berry-like component to it. The cup does cool down, and as a result, it opens up this brighter, more acidic attribute to the cup, and it was skewing a little bit more on the citric side of things, so I didn't enjoy it as much as the first impression. Well, we continue on to day 14, another Chemex day, and the cup seems to come out slightly more clean and sweet in this brew method, as there are plenty of the Kenyan savory base components to this cup of coffee with a brighter citric sweetness that makes up for that. In addition to that, slightly tropical and vibrant, so it was another good day through the Chemex. Day 16, the cup continues to skew more in the direction of the traditional side of Kenyan coffees, as it does radiate plenty of these stronger savory Kenyan characteristics with a very bright acidity. So a little less of the initial sweeter aspects on this day. But as we continued on to day 18, the cup is back to its best, and this one was when it was run through the V60, as there was still plenty of the savory base to the cup itself, but much more of the vibrant tart berries were coming out on this day, and it was complemented well by a wonderful tropical citrus. There's a slight bit of herbality too, and that always reminds me when it has that sort of red herbal florality to it of hibiscus. And I don't recall whether or not they have a hibiscus note listed on here, but yeah, definitely had some floral aspects to it. So a better day on day 18. Day 20, continue on, and I definitely settled on some more moderate temperatures. So I did attempt to tone this coffee down lower temperatures, and I did also try higher temperatures. But what I really liked about this coffee at the more moderate temperatures was, even though it still gave out so many of those savory Kenyan components, it was complemented well by the sweetness that was coming from it. There was enough in the other aspects, most distinctly the fruit components, that made up for what I deem to be not necessarily my favorite thing, savory aspects of Kenyan coffees. Fair bit of citric lemon as the cup cools, a strong herbality to give off that hibiscus-like component yet again, and there's an overall candied sweetness and an almost punchy component to the cup. Day 22, the cup continues to remain pretty consistent with marginal increases in the overall vibrancy, berried sweetness, and a little less of the savory red fruit aspects on this day. Punchy, tropical yet again in a more pronounced manner than the citrus, so that was a positive. And final notes, we have day 24. The cup has mostly settled, as it has been pretty consistent throughout. Still a slight bit of the Kenyan savory-like aspects on the forefront of this cup, but the trade-off for the brighter, sweeter berry and citric components are definitely worth it. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheels so you can see what we were getting. Right, and it looks like quite a few level 4s, so let's go through those real quick. First one, the savoriness level 4. Yeah, it is a Kenyan coffee, and Kenyan coffees definitely tend to have that more savory aspect to them. This one had an abundance, and it was one of the more pronounced characteristics within this coffee, so definitely justified there at that level 4 mark. Body level 4, that's interesting. It does have a slightly higher body than even a normal Kenyan coffee would have. So typically you associate that with that juicy body at that level 3 mark, but even then a slight bit more of that body. I kind of agree with it. I think I just wanted to put it at that level 4 to showcase that it has a little bit more body than even a standard Kenyan. Finish level 4, that's not surprising. They are always at a level 4 when it comes to Kenyan coffees, as that tends to be the case. They have a really long lasting finish to them, so not surprising there. Same with the acidity. It's rare that either of those two are below a level 4 mark, so plenty of acidity in this cup too. And then the fruit components, berry fruit at a level 4 and a citrus fruit at a level 4. Definitely agree with both of those things. Definitely the two most pronounced fruit characteristics to it, including that lemon, which was at times quite prominent and present. I think that they have a lemon lime flavor note listed on here, and that definitely makes a lot of sense. A couple of level 3s, so the cleanliness level 3, I always say that it's rare that a Kenyan coffee goes above a level 3, and this one definitely had a lot of the savory aspects, the herbal aspects that may have taken away from it being at a higher mark, but that's, again, pretty standard in line with what you would expect. Sweetness level 3, and while I have said that this is on the slightly sweeter side of Kenyan coffees, it still reaches that level 3 mark, as I couldn't necessarily justify all the way up at the level 4, but there was a nice, delightful candied sweetness to the cup, so I really like it there at that level 3 mark. At its best, it could have been on the lower side of level 4, but we'll leave it there for now. And then last thing, the florality at a level 3. That one's another one that on its day could have been a level 4. Definitely got a fair bit of those herbal, floral aspects to this cup, so definitely thinking hibiscus yet again, and I think it's probably best there at that level 3, as oftentimes those fruit components as well as the savory components were slightly more pronounced. But for the most part, I think I like the way that this tasting wheel looks. Looks pretty accurate for what I was getting from this cup. All right, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. So I like this one a little bit more than I like the standard American Kenyan, and I don't want to take that away. This was very much a standard American Kenyan in the sense that it had the acidity, the body, as well as the savory aspects to it. But at the same time, it was a little bit more bright and a little bit more vibrant. And I oftentimes say that if you can balance out the acidity with some great sweetness, then I will like the Kenyan coffee more than most other Kenyan coffees. So I think they did a good job of balancing that savory aspect with a lot of the other components that came with this coffee. So it's really hard to tell too much about Duck Rabbit based off of this one coffee, especially since it is a Kenya. But I thought that this was on the slightly better side of American Kenyans that I have had this year. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to, and that's who it must go to, is your standard American Kenyan coffee drinker, but with a little bit more sweetness, a little bit more body. Those are the two directions that I want to point this coffee towards, because it had those, and I keep harping on the fact that it was a little bit more well-rounded, had a little bit more depth and complexity than I typically get from a lot of other American Kenyan coffees. So I'm most notably thinking that slight candied sweetness I was getting, the notable pronounced citrus at times as well. And those things coupled with the fact that it didn't necessarily have the most kind of tomato forward savory aspect to it. While it's at a level 4, it still wasn't necessarily the most dominant factor. I have to say that I think that's probably a pretty good fit for this coffee. I think for the most part though, I'll leave this review at that. If you by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, we'd love to hear your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Gachathaini wash processed Kenya from Duck Rabbit Coffee. Thank you for watching.